Well, hello. This is the Gerard Brennan Disorder Podcast, and this is the theme music. Well, it's been a fun few days. The last time I recorded in this manner was on Thursday morning before the event with Simon Maltman. I've since put out a podcast that gives you an insight into what went on for the event. We were in Bangor Carnegie Library together. Both of us brought our guitars and our books, and we decided to put on a really good show, basically. In the last podcast, I was hoping that it would be a really good night, and that positive thought turned into a reality, and it was. Simon gathered up a really good crowd for us, and they were really into everything that we did. At first, while I was doing my reading, there was the little creeping thought that nobody was enjoying this, that I was not being my usual charming self. But after the reading finished, there was a nice wee round of applause, and I sort of relaxed into it then, But a few days beforehand, I had done that same reading, and I was getting a few laughs at some of the key lines in it, and I think that set me up for a higher expectation, And then as I was reading it for the second time, and people weren't really laughing or reacting, I kind of thought, this isn't hitting home at all. But I blasted on through it, because that's what you do when you think you're struggling. You keep going until the struggle's over, one way or another. And I got through it, and it seemed that everybody enjoyed it. It was just a different kind of crowd, the kind of crowd that doesn't really laugh in the middle of things, They were all very friendly, and then they started laughing a bit more when we were actually having a little bit of a chat and back and forth, and they were really enthusiastic about us playing a couple of songs. There's no point really recapping everything, because you can go back and listen to the other one, but if you haven't had time to listen to that hour-long podcast, which is the longest one I've put out so far, I suppose I can just let you know that we played Hey Joe and Whiskey in the Jar, and as suspected, Simon's guitar playing was friggin' fantastic. He's really good at doing wee solos and acoustic, and they came through really nice, I had a nice wee setup as well. We were going through one of Simon's Marshall amps and everything, and we had a couple of microphones going, and the room in Bangor Library, it was quite echoey, but it suited our purposes really well. I suppose you would say there were good acoustics for what we were trying to do. At first I was a bit worried. I thought it was going to be a little bit too noisy even, because as people were coming in and they were talking, there was quite a big clamour building up, but like I said, it was quite a appreciative and civilised audience. They sat really still and quiet and listened to everything, and only laughed at the quieter moments, of which there were few. Which reminds me, as I listened back to the live recording, I noticed that I talk a lot faster when I'm in front of a crowd, and I even read quite fast as well. I was alarmed at how quickly I did blast through that chapter of Disorder, and perhaps that's why they weren't allowing themselves a wee space to laugh. Maybe I was talking over the punchlines too quickly. So it's something to learn from, something you should always do, and it's why I'm glad I recorded that one. I tried to record the event with Rosemary Jenkinson, which was one of the events where people do laugh a bit more, but I had a bad setting on my Olympus voice recorder. I had like a voice recognition thing that is supposed to set the recording off as soon as somebody starts talking, but the thing must have been too far away for that to work effectively, so we just got a load of garbled sentences that ran over each other instead, which was a shame, because that one went really well as well. And Rosemary's very funny, witty, and her readings were good fun. But, that one's in the ether, and just the people who arrived at that event really have the whole experience of that. And really, even if you listen to the podcast of the Bangor Library event, you're not really getting the whole experience. You don't get to see where Simon and I maybe smiled and enjoyed a bit of appreciation from the crowd, or when we looked a little bit nervous and were hoping that everything was going well. And you definitely didn't see the bit where Colin Bateman showed up at the start and offered us both a few words of encouragement and wished us luck for the event, which was so cool. I mean, Colin Bateman has long been attributed by me as the person who set me on the path of writing about Northern Ireland. Before I read Divorce and Jack, I didn't think there was an appetite for these kind of books. Now, perhaps you could argue that there isn't a huge appetite for them at all now anyway, and, Colin's writing was just something special. But we have seen a pretty big crop of writers who set their books here, and I think there is something in it, but it's just that sometimes we have to look beyond these things as well. So I'm currently considering writing a book set outside of Northern Ireland, just to see what it's like, first of all, to not be sort of shackled by the whole political background that we always have to explain here. What it would be like to just have criminals who are criminals not because they're trying to justify it with some sort of political dogma, or pretend that they're interested in a united Ireland or loyalty to the British government or whatever, and that they're not just selling drugs and robbing places because they like money. So that could be fun. And also, there are certain things you can't really do in Ireland, I would argue that The Fall has a few problems in it, because I feel that Jamie Dornan's character would have been found down in the shop in the Holy Lands or something pretty easily. I can't see how he evaded the PSNI for so long after being a serial killer, because the place is just too small, There are certain things that don't work. So if I have a character, if I want that stranger comes to town character, it's not going to really work in Northern Ireland. I know myself, when I moved to the small town of Dundrum, people kind of ask you, maybe not like super nosily, but to make conversation, they ask where you're from, where you went to school, who you know, who you played football with as a kid, who your granny is, what your dad did for a living. And pretty soon they'll find some common ground somewhere. They'll say, oh, so you probably know the, let's say, Boyle family. And you say, oh yeah, I went to school with one of the youngest kids in our family. And they go, oh yeah, have you now? I know who you are now. I know pretty much everything about you. I know your religion, your educational background. I know whether or not you're from a good family. All just like that, through a few wee questions. But somewhere as big as America, or as busy as London or something like that, you're not really going to get that level of investigation, People don't tend to delve as deep into their neighbour's background, I suppose. So that gives you different possibilities in a story. And that's something that I kind of want to explore next. Now, that's not saying that I'm going to turn my back on Northern Irish crime fiction. I still have a lot of ideas, and in fact I have 2 more novels with my agent that haven't been published yet. And they are set in Belfast and Warrenpoint, almost in equal measure. And they talk a lot about our situation here. And I have more to say about this place. But I also have a kind of a need in me to just write a story for the sake of writing a story. It doesn't have to explain history or politics or anything like that. And I'm looking forward to that. I just haven't started yet because I've taken on this little podcast project, and it's been a very busy couple of weeks. Since the Bangor event, Friday was kind of a bit of a down day. I spent the time trying to learn how to use the Audacity program so I could clean up the sound file a bit, because both Simon and I were sitting a little bit back from the microphone, and there was feedback from the guitar amps and things like that, and I wanted to try and take that out a little bit. So what you get is, a slightly better version of the original recording, with little bits of feedback cut out and punched up a wee bit where we've had to fiddle about with the equipment and things like that. And there's also like a kind of a weird robotic quality to our voices as well, and Simon's guitar in parts sounds like a mandolin, as he said himself to me. But it adds to it. It kind of gives it a little, I don't know, like a trippy effect or something, and I find it quite pleasing. There's still a little bit of background noise that the noise reduction couldn't really do much with, mostly because we were both talking quite quickly and there were very few silences, There's nothing kills an event worse than 5 seconds of pure silence. But that also means that you've got no parts of the file to lift out to use as your noise reduction thing. But I think it went well anyway. The recording is listenable, it's just not super high quality. And I think I'm going to try and record more live events in this way. Again, I'm talking about the future when I have slightly better recording equipment and things like that. So that will make it easier too, and I'll probably get better at using that Audacity program, which is going to help with that as well. So really, I'm just letting you into my plans for the future of the podcast. There'll be more be taken from it, you know. But in the meantime, I mean, I am enjoying reading Bounce, and I have another couple of novellas that I do plan to read in this manner as well. And hopefully as the podcast episodes go on, you'll see my level of expertise rise as well, you know. But speaking about levels of expertise, even though Friday was quite a quiet day, Saturday was a big one for me. I got up and went to a meeting in an undisclosed location. I'm only saying that for now because I want to make sure that everything works out before I jinx it by revealing too much. But my play Your Turn was staged again on Saturday night in Carnlough, in a bar in Carnlough. I haven't heard much about it yet, but hopefully I'll hear from the director today after the whole buzz has died down a wee bit for him. And because it was going on, I thought, God, I would like to see that again, but somewhere closer to where I live. So I went to this undisclosed location and spoke to a few very sharp business people, and it looks like we might be able to get it going somewhere closer to where I live, and it's a very exciting venue. So I was already very excited about that. You can tell because I've used the word excited in a number of formats many times now, so I'll try and cut back on that a wee bit. But after that, I rushed back home and got ready, threw a bit of food into me and packed my boxing gloves and my jiu-jitsu gi and travelled down to Newry to the compound gym. Had a few rounds of sparring, Muay Thai style, which were a lot of fun, even though I got walloped quite a few times. But, you know, that's part of the fun of it, you know. High stakes problem solving, as the old fella Joe Rogan would say, you know, podcast guru and commentator of the UFC. He calls it, what is it again? High risk problem solving with dire consequences, or something like that. I might have mangled the quote a wee bit, but basically it's what I said about jiu-jitsu last time. It's kind of like chess. But anyway, after the Muay Thai sparring, there was a team grading with the Team Torres people in the Newry gym, and we had our jiu-jitsu brothers and sisters come from across the land, or Dundalk and Lisburn, and it was quite a crowd packed into those mats, and it was really warm, and we were wearing our thick, hard-wearing pyjamas, and man, I was roasted. And you know, the one good thing about being that hot when you train, though, is that it cuts down on the risk of injury a bit. You know, your muscles are quite warm, so they're less likely to tear. So that's the thing, that's sort of like the little mantra I have in my head whenever I'm feeling uncomfortable and training in high temperatures. I'm like, could be worse, could be cold, and you could be getting injured like crazy, you know, you're not a young man anymore. I'm approaching 39 currently, and these are the thoughts that I have to have in my mind, you know. And when you have to drive about 45 minutes to an hour to your gym, there's not really much time for a warm-up beforehand, so, you know, you take what advantages you can, and if the weather offers one of those, then so be it. Anyway, I'm really dragging this story out. All I really wanted to tell you was that by the end of the grading, I had earned my blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Yeah, my blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Now, to the uninitiated, that doesn't sound like a huge big deal. It's just a different colour of material to wrap around my pyjamas. But to me, it's massive, you know. It's great. I feel pretty honoured to be part of the blue belt squad. And even to have been part of the team as a white belt was great, you know. There's such great camaraderie and everything, but to get that little nod of approval in the form of your new belt, and to get like all the friendly congratulations and handshakes off the team members, and, you know, genuine congratulations from them, because you can sense when someone's being genuine, you know. And I loved it. It was fantastic. And despite the fact that soon afterwards I got a whipping from most of the people there with their belts, because that's one of those weird jiu-jitsu traditions. Once you earn your belt, everybody gets to hit you with their own belt, and they're vicious bastards with it too, you know. Nearly knocked me off my feet a few times, but I took it. I was still smiling by the end of it, because I got my blue belt and I carried it home, and I wore it for a portion of the day. The rest of the time it sat on my bookshelf along with my other books that I'd written, you know, my little achievement hunter shelf, I suppose you would call it. And it had me floating, you know. And then yesterday was a good day as well, because I went to visit my parents, and my dad's been working on a new play. My dad, the playwright, who wrote The Sweetie Bottle with me, and recently had a play called The Blue Boy of Glenmore staged in the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. So you know he's the real deal. But he has written a new play, or most of a new play, called The Irish Guru, and we did like a table read, which was kind of fun. The kids walking around and my dad and I attempting to do West of Ireland accents and get the pacing of this play with him, you know. We were timing it to see how far he'd come with it. And it was a lot of fun. And then from there we ate dinner and laughed and joked, and as this is usual with a Sunday visit to the Joe and Rosemary household. And somehow we got into big deep discussions about religion and stuff like that, and I was thinking, geez, if I ever have a podcast guest, the first one I bring on is going to have to be my dad, because it explains a lot about how my brain works, I think. The guy's near as mental as I, huh? It's funny. Anyhow, I've probably talked on a lot longer than usual, and I'm conscious that the majority of you are tuning in just to find out what's happening next with Paddy the Bouncer, so I should probably get on to that. If the feeling takes me, I'll maybe have another wee chat after, but we'll see. As usual, I'm on a strict timeline. I didn't get to go to my Monday morning jiu-jitsu class, unfortunately. Well, it would have been lovely to break in my blue belt right away, but we have a surveyor coming to the house to check up on some recent building work, so I kind of had to be here. And also, if I'm 100% honest, I slept in a little bit this morning, so I wasn't 100% prepared to race out to the gym first thing. And c'est la vie, these things happen. I'll just be starting my workout week a wee bit later this week. But now that I'm a blue belt, I'm going to have to train even harder, so that people don't look at me on the mats and think, how the hell does this lad have a blue belt? Sure, I can choke him out, you know. So I'll be training harder, and with more motivation and enthusiasm and vigour, and I'm going to be watching a ton of YouTube videos as well, just to try and sharpen up my submission technique and stuff. So my good friends down at Team Torres, you have been warned. There's a new animal on the mats, and he's hungry for your submissions. Good luck, lads. So without further a one-sided conversation, here is the next installation of Bounce by Gerard Brennan. We're up to chapter 19 now, and the chapter is titled Cat and Mouse. I had him pegged as a bigger man. All the times I stared at every feature in that printout, I imagined I was looking him in the face, squaring up to him. This must have put the idea in my head that he was my height. I'd say he's 4 or 5 inches shorter. Broad enough, but nothing to shit myself over. I've dropped much bigger. No idea how he got labelled Big Billy. His face, though. I can see badness in it. No wonder Sammy took note of this character. He'd tick every box in the bouncer's potential trouble checklist. He earned that mug through years of heavy drinking. Red across his cheekbones and nose, vertical lines deep in his cheeks, and horizontal furrows in his forehead. A drinker's jaundiced tan. And the eyes, desperate and sad and miserable. I'll happily put this wreck out of his misery. The barman is pouring a pint of lager for Billy, and he hands it to him just as the self-hating, closet homosexual, teenager-beaten scumbag steadies himself on a high stool at the bar. My Guinness is still settling. I need to stay calm and finish the pint. Things won't work out the way I want them to if I don't keep a handle on myself. The barman rings in the lager and hands the bastard his change. You well, Billy? Aye. Good talking to you, like. Billy grunts. Aye. The barman, more efficient than I'd have expected in a wee place like this, has my pint topped up and on my table seconds later. You winning? He asks and nods at the paper. It's opened at the crossword. I've been flipping through the pages aimlessly and happened to stop there. I shrug. They're easier when you have a pen. You want one? No thanks. You sure? Aye. Please stop talking to me. He catches my vibe and leaves me in peace. Poor fella. The wee barman's just trying to get his shift in a bit quicker. But there's no crack from any of us grumpy hole patrons. I know what my problem is. I just don't want to be remembered. And Billy Larmer is an obvious cunt. Don't know what's wrong with the young couple at the corner of the bar, though. They're bugging the shit out of me, actually. I know that they shouldn't, but fuck it. They both need a shake. Maybe I should set fire to your man's paper and steal her phone. Or maybe I should focus on the one who really deserves my anger. Breathe. 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 Sup. 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 Repeat. Even though I'm fighting hard to control my urges, the pint disappears much quicker than I wanted it to. I feel a bit of a buzz after 2 pints, the size of me too. Maybe I'm not fit for... No, don't go there. I consider bringing my glass to the bar before I leave. That might stick in the barman's head though. Instead I give him a slight nod and he returns it. Then I head out the door. It's time to wait. My car is parked in a lay-by across the street from Castro's. I'd have been worried about staking the place out from such close quarters, but the line of young trees running up the middle of the street makes for a decent obstruction. It might have been more of a worry if they'd a doorman on duty, bored and trying to spot something suspicious, but to anybody inside the pub I'm as good as invisible. I lower the back of the driver's seat so I can slouch low with my head turned to the right. The position gives me a perfect line of sight. Autumn twilight darkens the streets, but I'll see Billy in the doorway lighten as soon as he moves. I crack open a tin of Red Bull and down it. There's little chance I'll fall asleep. I can barely catch a few hours in my own bed since Friday night, but I'm taking no chances. Chapter 20. Beatdown. Billy Lormer's silhouette is framed by condensation on my car window. I've been rubbing a little spy circle clear for the last hour. Either he drinks less than I suspected or he's left early to catch the off licence before it closes. Doesn't matter which. He's on the move now, and this is my opportunity. I get out of the car and stretch. My spine crackles. I shake a little of the deadness out of my legs. Billy has turned right and is headed towards the library. Given that it's Sunday night, I doubt he's planning to call in for the latest Dan Brown. Most likely he intends to walk uphill, past the Foyleside shopping centre, towards one of the set of stone steps that grant access to the walls. The thought of catching up to him on the walls puts an extra spring in my step. Poetic justice, isn't it? I'm right too. He's making slow progress up the hill. There's little danger of him breaking into a run, unsteady as he is. I hold back. It'd be a bad idea to get too close to him right now. The area is too well lit. Slow uphill progress heats my thighs. I relish the sensation. The work I've put in at the gym over the years still pays off, even though I'm not as gung-ho about maintaining my bulk as I used to be. My breathing isn't as steady as I'd like, but I'm doing okay. Big Billy Lormer isn't going to know what hit him. But I wonder if he should know. What if he thinks this is some random attack? It won't matter if he's dead. Do I have it in me to kill a man? In self-defence, probably. But in cold blood? I'll find out soon. He's climbing the steps to walk along the walls. I'm closer to him now, less cautious as the streetlights become fewer and farther between. It's almost time. I might not be able to do this. Fuck. I'm losing my bottle. Just go fast. And he's right there, within touching distance. I look ahead of him, behind me, and it's just the two of us. He's oblivious to my presence, weak, prone, no match for me at all. This is the wrong thing to do. But I do it anyway. I kick the back of his weight-bearing leg as he takes a step. Old school. He topples, lashes out on his way down, but hits nothing but air. I skip to his side as he gets his knees under him, launch a boot into his flank. Now he's on his back. He's like an upturned tortoise, arms and legs raised. The bastard has some fight experience under his belt. He knows to keep his feet between us. Makes it tougher for me to get to him. I take a step forward and he lashes out with a kick. It's an easy one to dodge, but I'm losing patience. I want to be on top of him. His fitness levels are letting him down already. I can see a tremor in his limbs. It's been a while since he's done a sit-up by the looks of it. He gasps and his heels touch the ground. I close in and kick his ribs again. That's them cracked. Another few kicks and I'm pretty sure they're broken. Billy's crying, like my son cried. Good. He's certain he'll die, like James Cooper died. Better. I'm in a perfect position to stomp his face. But I can't do it. Fuck. stand over Billy Lorimer. He's got no fight in him. Hasn't even got the wit to curl up into a ball. I think he might have pissed himself. I'm sorry. I can barely hear him, but it's not a tough sentence to lip read. He blinks tears out of his eyes. I kneel down, worry that he could lash out at me. What are you sorry for? I hurt your son. He knows me. Not a huge surprise. Derry's a small city and he's a drinker. I was stupid to think I could go undetected like some TV spy. But it's alarming that he knows Sean. It's okay. I deserve this. He seems to be at peace. I don't like that. I'm going to kill you, I say. I know. When I saw you at Castro's. Billy takes a deep breath and winces. I ordered 2 whiskies after you left. Good ones. My last meal. My fist hammers down just below his sternum. It surprises me as much as him. He convulses, turns his head away from me and pukes. This is a dirty thing I'm doing. I hate myself as much as I hate this pathetic excuse for a man. Killing him would be a mercy. Turn yourself in, Billy. I don't want to go to jail. James Cooper didn't want to die. Billy howls. I put my hand across his mouth to dampen the sound. Shut the fuck up! Somebody's bound to have heard that. My time's up. I need to kill him or leave him. If I keep my hands like this, he'll die. I've jammed his nostrils with the webbing between my thumb and forefinger. He stares at me with bulging eyes, and now his whole body judders. His primal instincts kick in, and he wraps his hands around my wrist, the injured one. I hiss when he pulls on it, resist his attempts to survive. Then he jerks harder and I have to let go. Billy sucks in a deep breath. I can see it hurts him to fill his lungs, but his body forces it. In his mind he might be ready to die, but his heart hasn't received the message yet. I'm not going to kill him, but I have to know something. Did somebody tip you off about me? Sammy. You're related? We went to school together. Us prods have to stick together. Not that many of us in the city. Why didn't you run? Can't run away from what I did. Only God can judge me. Fuck yourself. I stand up and kick his head like it's the last ball in a penalty shootout. His lights go out. I'm not sure if he's dead. Not sure if I want him to be. I back off. Never kick a man when he's down. A decent enough rule to live by when you deal with decent people. Billy Lorimer is not decent. He's barely people. Whatever becomes of him, I'll feel no guilt. I move on, slowly at first. Then I'm striding, eager to get off these walls. I contemplate whether or not I'd have suffocated him if my wrist wasn't injured. The steps are in view. I've almost put Billy Lorimer behind me, come what may. When I get to the top of the steps, I see 2 peelers at the bottom. Chapter 21. Bad Boys. Panic bounces off the lining of my lungs. My heart searches for the ejector button. Sweat escapes my pores. I'm caught. They must have heard Billy howl. Could it have taken them this long, though? I was up there for ages, wasn't I? My mind is blank, but my legs keep moving. I descend the steps, and I feel like I'm watching this all play out from above, like a soul still tethered to its failing shell. The peelers look up and acknowledge me. I nod, my face a mask of serenity. One of the peelers is tall. His face is familiar. He's the one that led Sean to the interview room. It's only a matter of time until he puts this all together. I've fucked myself. Once the sound of the cop's footsteps fade, I run. It's all downhill from here. So I think maybe that's another nice wee cliffhanger to leave it at today. We are now officially 92% into this story, apparently. So I may as well leave the final chapters for one final read through. If I keep on going, this podcast will be too long, or, the next one will be too short. So trying to strike a little balance here. We're already at the half-hour mark practically, so again, cliffhangers, good time in, I'm going to take that as serendipity. Also, it sounds like there's a dog about to start barking up a storm again, so I don't know how much time I have left with this uninterrupted silence. It's hard to come by, this kind of silence in this busy house, and I'm conscious now that this is the last week before the summer holiday starts and the kids are going to be off school, which is going to cut into my freedom a little bit. Not in a bad way, you know, it's nice to be able to have that luxury to spending time with your kids when they're off school, but it is going to cause a notable downturn in the kind of stuff that I can get done. One thing I can guarantee though is that we'll get to the end of this novella before that happens, and then the podcasts might get a little bit less frequent, but my plan in the short term for the podcast is to maybe dig up a few of my older short stories and read those. There are a few I've done at different events that come over quite well as pieces read out or performed, if you want to call it that. I'm not sure if I can call these things performances. I'm more comfortable with the term readings, but in essence that's what it is, you know. I'm putting my own inflection into these things, and since I wrote them myself, it's a truer reflection, I suppose. It's almost me getting the story out there in a manner that I really want it to be heard, I guess. I think it's nice when you're reading something and you have your own idea of people's accents and things in your head and your own characters, and you can pace the story accordingly or whatever, but there's something to be said for me being able to control even that much, you know. It feels nice, and one of the lads at the gym had said that he likes what it adds to it, you know, that he can hear it in my voice and when I pause and what I emphasise and things like that. So yeah, it makes this a slightly different artistic endeavour, I suppose, if you want to get a little bit highfalutin about it. But that's cool, you know. It just shows you that there are, you know, extra advantages to doing it this way, to getting your stories across this way. The other reason that it's good to do it this way is because I know a lot of people who are interested in what I do but don't necessarily have the time or the inclination to read, but they maybe have time in their lives when they're driving or running or exercising or tidying their houses or whatever, where they can listen to something like this and they get to see then what I do and hear, I suppose. They could see it if they decided to go to one of the events, but again, people have busy lives, you know. A lot of the people I know would rather be down at the gym trying to choke out their friends or punch a heavy bag rather than come to one of these book events. So it's kind of cool that I can deliver my work in another medium now. It's really, really cool, in fact. I love doing this podcast, and I think I'll keep it going for as long as I can, even beyond when I've exhausted all of my reading material. Perhaps by then I'll be comfortable enough with this one-sided conversation dynamic where I can actually deliver something entertaining without it being, you know, a set reading. But as it is, I'm liking the mix of the two. So, and I'm not really in danger of running out of work anytime soon. I have a whole stack of novellas to get through. There'll be excerpts from my novels, and in the days when I want to deliver a nice standalone podcast, I do still have a good number of short stories which I'm fond of and which I think will make nice performance pieces. Yeah, do you know what? I'm just going to go with the term performance instead of reading. This is a performance. I'm inhabiting a character that I've created. So it's a little bit like a radio play, I suppose. A little bit. So we'll call it my bedroom office studio theatre. How's that for wanky? Yeah, so before I go, I just wanted to mention a couple of books that I've been reading lately. Before the Bangor event, I read Simon Maltman's latest novel, A Kill for the Poet, which was a rip-roaring read. Something I like about Simon's books is that they're really pacey. The chapters are nice and short, and the writing style has a no-nonsense, no-frills sort of vibe to it, so you get through the story really quickly, you know. I gave myself a few days to read it before the event because I wanted it to be fresh in my mind as we talked about our work with each other, and that worked well. I knew exactly, you know, I could access my memories much quicker. I had a better idea of the characters and all. If I read another 3 or 4 books now, that memory's going to fuzz a wee bit, you know. I have quite a good brain for storing story facts and, you know, little images and things like that, but after a while the plot kind of gets a bit ropey on me. What I tend to remember is like the style of writing or certain key events or nice wee images that the writer has created, and that's what makes that book, you know, more memorable to me. The more of those little character ticks and, you know, beautiful pieces of writing that there are in a book, the more likely I am to remember it, and the higher up it becomes in my fondness hierarchy of books, I suppose you would say. So Simon's book, I think it'll be a memorable one. It's not one I'll forget anytime soon, and it was a fun read. It was a great experience in the moment as well. He was kind enough to give me a signed paperback version of it too, so I was reading in paperback rather than on my Kindle the last week, which was really nice. After I finished Simon's book, I started into Rosemary Jenkinson's short stories, titled Catholic Boy, and they are wonderful. I'm only about halfway through the collection, but God, I love her writing style. I had experienced her writing through her plays previously, but I hadn't read her prose before. I'd heard her read them on videos and things like that, and I'd read a little sample of the first story, Revival, which is about Alex Higgins, and I liked it alright, but the deeper I get into these stories, the more I'm going, wow, this is a good, honest writer. She's unflinching, and most of her characters are female as well, and she offers a unique perspective on that. I myself, as a straight white man, have dabbled in writing female protagonists, and although I have the backup system of checking certain things with my wife and all, to make sure that I'm not completely messing up the whole fair sex thing, I suppose you would say. Partially by not referring to them as the fair sex and things like that, but remembering that we're all people and that we probably do have similar thoughts and whatnot, but that the female experience is quite different from the male one. So I have my backup reader and my wife Michelle, who can sometimes point out when a thought has surfaced that a woman wouldn't think, or that a woman has reacted to a certain situation in a way that she wouldn't, in a way that maybe it would be kind of unbelievable that she would react. So that's good. And I think I've been lucky as well, because I have strong sisters, a strong mother, a strong wife. Even my daughter's growing up to be a very strong woman and full of character, and not afraid to share her thoughts and opinions. All of the women in my life are like this, and that's a blessing, because it means that I have to guess a lot less when I'm writing from a female perspective. But Rosemary Jenkinson is also a strong woman writing from a female perspective, and her way of doing it is really fascinating. I'm enjoying them, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of them. Again, I'm reading her work in paperback version rather than on a Kindle, and there's an added, layer of enjoyment to that experience, especially when it's such a nice little object as the version that Dura Press has put out of Rosemary's work. Lovely cover and lovely pages, thick and luxurious, and the typesetting's really nice as well. These are all the little things that add to it, kind of like having a nice car with comfortable seats and, a fine running engine. It's a more enjoyable experience, when your car is well serviced and has a full tank of diesel or petrol, if that's what you choose. And, you don't have to worry about it breaking down. It's the little details that make things more enjoyable. The same can be said for books. The nicer the book is, the better the quality of paper and the typesetting and the editing as well. Things that will pull you out of a good story, like repeated words or misspellings, or just any kind of mistake that maybe a word check wouldn't pick up. They can detract from the experience, but when it's a nice, tight, well put together object, it works lovely, and that's why I really like reading. But I also really like podcasts, and recently I've been listening a lot to Two Crime Writers on a Microphone and Blind Boy, two of my regular podcasts. I like Blind Boys because he has a similar format to this one, although he doesn't read as much of his work anymore. He does this thing called Hot Takes, which he talks about history, music, all sorts of wacky stuff. Last week he was arguing about the existence of the table in his room, which was interesting. And he's got that nice comforting voice, the thing he calls his podcast hug, and his funny wee Limerick accent as well. And the Two Crime Writers podcast, that features Steve Kavanagh and Luca Veste, and I always find it quite motivational as well, because they are two writers who are talking about writing and books, and among other things, they go off on a tangent as well, which is always enjoyable. But at the end of the day, it's always good to hear two writers who are at the top of their game talking about the industry and about their own struggles with writing, and it makes you feel a bit guilty if you hear that they've had a good week putting out the words and you haven't really, you've been slacking a wee bit. Not that it takes much to make me feel guilty when I'm not writing, but it's always good to have someone nudging you, even if they don't even know they're doing it. So thank you to Steve and Luca for always making me want to work a little bit harder. Speaking of that podcast, one half of it, Steve Kavanagh, has released his book 13 this week, and it seems to be scorching up the charts, so I just want to send a little congratulations to him. May the sales continue and keep blazing that trail to make it easier for us guys following in your slipstream. I'm delighted to see Steve do so well. As they say, when the tide rises, it lifts all the boats. And I think on that little positive note, and under the realisation that this podcast has grown to a grand old 41 minutes at this stage, I'm going to say cheerio for the day. And maybe try and get a little bit of writing done. I have stuff to be doing, I can't just be sitting here talking to myself all day. Although I'll probably continue to talk to myself just with the recorder off, and I'll probably procrastinate a lot by taking too long to decide what I'm going to have for lunch and washing the dishes really slowly while I pretend that I'm actually just considering my next wonderful work of fiction. And with that, I've actually burned another half minute. Go me, procrastination king. So until the next time, yous are all lovely, keep her lit, and I'll be chatting to yous again soon.